if you're watching this and you're thinking, this is going to be another dramatic story, I need you to understand something. I didn't believe in any of this. I was a public school teacher, a schedule person, a lesson plan person, a drink water and get 8 hours person. And then, in the middle of a normal Tuesday, my brain shut off, and I watched it happen. Before I say anything else, subscribe right now, not later, right now. Because stories like this don't just entertain people, they help people. And if you've ever had panic attacks, health scares, or you live with that quiet fear that something could happen at any moment, this might be the video you didn't know you needed. Also, comment, "I'm here," so I know you stayed for the hard part. This is one of those stories that grabs you by the throat, and I want you with me through it. My name is Lauren. I'm 47 years old. I'm as regular American as it gets. Suburban life, coffee in a travel mug, school drop-off lines, grading papers at the kitchen table. I teach 9th grade English in a public high school. I've spent most of my life trying to keep other people calm. I was the teacher who noticed the quiet kid, the teacher who kept snacks in my desk for the students, who came to class hungry, the teacher who smiled even when my head was pounding because the kids didn't need my bad day. And I was also the kind of woman who held everything together so tightly I didn't realize I was crushing myself. I didn't call it anxiety. I called it being responsible. I didn't call it burnout. I called it being committed. I didn't call it loneliness. I called it being fine. That's the part that matters. Because what happened to me didn't start with a stroke. It started with a life that looked normal from the outside and felt like I was drowning quietly on the inside. The day it happened was a Tuesday in late fall, cold morning, gray sky. That kind of day where the world looks slightly desaturated. I remember because I wore my favorite cardigan soft, oatmeal colored because I knew the classroom heater was broken again. First period went fine. Second period went fine. By third period, I was deep into a lesson on persuasive writing. We were talking about how people use emotion to convince you of things without you realizing it, how your brain can be led. The irony of that still messes with me. A student raised his hand and asked something I can't even remember now. I opened my mouth to answer, and the room tilted. Not like dizziness, not like standing up too fast. This was different. This felt like someone quietly unplugged me from the inside. I tried to keep going because that's what teachers do. We power through, we push, we smile through headaches. We normalize pain because everyone is watching us, and if we fall apart, the room falls apart. I remember gripping the edge of my desk. I remember the sound of my own voice getting strange, like it wasn't coming out right, like the words were slipping off the rails. Then my right hand stopped cooperating. I looked down and my fingers weren't doing what I told them to do. And my brain did something terrifying. It stayed calm, not because I wasn't scared, because it couldn't process fear fast enough. I tried to say, I need help. What came out was something else, something broken. A student laughed, just a nervous laugh, because teenagers don't know what to do when an adult starts glitching. Another student's face changed instantly, like he knew. He stood up and shouted, "She's not okay!" I tried to reassure them with my eyes. I tried to lift my hand. I tried to stand. And then my vision tunneled, like a camera lens closing. The last thing I saw clearly was the fluorescent lights above me and the faces of my students stretching into fear. And then I left. Not metaphorically, I left my body. I need you to stay with me here, because this is where most people decide, nope. But I'm telling you, what I experienced was more real than the classroom I spent half my life in. One second I was falling, or at least I thought I was falling, and the next second I was above the room. Above, looking down. I saw my body on the floor beside my desk. I saw my cardigan bunched weirdly at my shoulder. I saw a student kneeling near me, Crying, shaking, I saw another student running to the door. I saw my whiteboard with the words, "Claim plus evidence," written across it in blue marker. And I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel panic. I felt separation. Like I was watching a scene, and yet I was still me. But the me that was watching felt calmer than I have ever felt in my entire life. Here's the first thing that hit me like a punch. I could hear everything. Not just sounds, thoughts, emotions. Fear had a texture. It was like static in the air. I felt my students' fear the way you feel heat from an open oven, and I wanted to reach down and tell them I was okay, even though my body clearly wasn't. Then something shifted. The classroom blurred at the edges, like wet paint, and I was pulled, not yanked, not forced, pulled like a tide. I moved through something that wasn't a hallway, wasn't a tunnel, wasn't a dream. It was like falling upward into quiet. And then there was light. Not bright, not blinding, alive. The kind of light that doesn't attack your eyes, it enters you. And with it came a feeling so overwhelming that it turned my ideas about love into dust. It wasn't romance. It wasn't comfort. It was belonging. The kind of belonging you didn't know you were missing until you feel it. And under that belonging, I realized something brutal. I had been living like I had to earn my right to exist. I had been living like love was conditional. I had been living like rest was something you deserved only after you proved you were useful. And in that light, none of that was true. I felt seen, fully. Every thought I hid, every resentment I swallowed, every time I smiled when I wanted to scream, every time I felt like I was failing. Seen and not rejected. If you're still here, hit like and comment "stayed." Seriously, those comments tell other people they're not crazy for listening to something this intense. And it tells me you're with me. In the light, I sensed a presence. Not a person with a face, not a voice from the sky. A presence, like intelligence, like warmth, like something that knew my name without needing to say it. And then it happened. My life opened, not as a highlight reel, as a truth. I saw moments from my life, but I didn't just watch them. I felt them from both sides. I felt what it was like to be me as a little girl, sitting on the stairs, listening to my parents argue. I felt my own fear. And then this is what crushed me. I felt my mother's fear too. I felt how she tried to hold our family together with exhaustion and silence. I saw myself in college, trying to be perfect, trying to be impressive. I felt the pressure in my chest. And then I felt my friends' quiet envy, their admiration, their distance. I felt the walls I built without realizing it. I saw my first year teaching. I saw the way I smiled too much and apologized too quickly. I saw the way I stayed late every day because I thought if I did enough, I would finally feel good enough. And then the review got personal. I saw the student I failed, no, not academically, emotionally. A girl who used to come into my room at lunch and just sit there, quiet. I thought I was giving her space. I thought I was being respectful. But in the life review, I felt what it was like to be her. She wasn't asking for space. She was begging silently for someone to notice she was disappearing. I felt her loneliness like a bruise. And I realized how many times I had been kind in a way that was safe for me, but not deep enough to truly help. That guilt rose up and I expected punishment, but there was no punishment. There was instruction. It was like the present said, see it, learn, love better. Then something else hit me. I felt the people who loved me. My sister, my best friend, my students, even coworkers I barely talked to. I felt the ripple of my existence through them, how one sentence I said years ago still lived in someone's mind, how one moment of encouragement kept a kid from giving up, and I realized another brutal truth. You don't know what you matter until you can't speak anymore. Then the presence showed me something that made my teacher brain short-circuit. Time wasn't linear. In that space, everything was now. And in that now, I understood that consciousness isn't trapped in a body the way we think. That's the best I can do with words. Words are tiny compared to what it felt like. Then I felt a pull, not physical, emotional. A string attached to something on earth. And I saw it. My classroom, my students, their fear. And my first thought was, they're going to remember this forever. That thought mattered more to me than my own death. I tried to send them something: comfort, reassurance, anything. And the presence responded with a feeling that said, you can still help, but not from here. Then I was shown a choice. Not a dramatic two-door scene. A choice like awareness. Stay in the light, in that belonging, in that peace, or go back into pain, into a body that might not work right, into a life that was already too heavy. And I wanted to stay. I wanted to stay so badly it made me ache. Then I saw my sister's face, not as a vision like a movie, as a feeling. Like I touched her grief before it happened. And I understood. If I didn't go back, she would carry a question mark forever, a hole she couldn't patch. And the presence communicated something that felt like a mission. You're not done. And I, stubborn, exhausted, human, answered with the most honest thing I've ever thought. I'm tired. And the response came so gentle it broke me. I know. That I know wasn't sympathy. It was recognition. It was the kind of I know that makes you feel safe enough to finally stop pretending. And then the light started to fade. Not like it was shutting me out, but like it was letting me go. And I panicked. Not because I was afraid of dying, because I didn't want to leave what felt like the realest home I'd ever known. And then I slammed back into my body. Pain hit like a truck. Sound came roaring back. Shouts, chaos, the squeak of shoes on tile, the distant wail of a siren. My lungs fought for air. My mouth tasted metallic. My right side felt like it belonged to a stranger. Someone was saying my name over and over like a rope they were throwing at me. Lauren, Lauren, stay with me. I opened my eyes, and the fluorescent lights were back, cruel and bright. I tried to speak. My tongue wouldn't cooperate. I tried to move. My arm didn't listen. The worst part wasn't fear. The worst part was understanding how fragile normal is. In the ambulance, I stared at the ceiling and felt tears leaking out of my eyes without me deciding to cry. My brain kept replaying the light like a secret, like a forbidden memory. At the hospital, they said the words I'd heard on TV 1,000 times. Stroke, clot, time window, damage, recovery. They asked me to squeeze fingers, to lift my arm, to repeat phrases. I failed at things that used to be automatic. My identity teacher, caretaker, strong one, started peeling off like paint. And in that stripping, the lesson began. Because here's what nobody talks about. Surviving something like that doesn't just change your body. It changes your psychology. It changes how you trust the world. It changes how you trust yourself. For weeks afterward, I was terrified to be alone. I didn't tell people that. I smiled. I joked. I acted like the strong teacher again. But at night, my mind would spiral. What if it happens again? What if I'm one wrong step away from disappearing? What if I die and everyone just moves on? And then, like a counterpunch, another thought would come. You've already been there, and you were safe. That memory became my anchor, but it also made me angry. Because if that light exists, if that belonging exists, why are we down here hurting each other? Why are we racing? Why are we performing? Why are we living like love is scarce? During rehab, one day I couldn't stop crying. The therapist asked what was wrong, and I finally said it. I felt more loved when I was dying than I feel when I'm alive. The room went quiet. And then she said something that turned the whole thing. Then bring that love back with you. Bring it back. That became my new curriculum. Not for my students. For me, I started making changes that terrified me. I stopped staying late every day. I stopped proving my worth through exhaustion. I started asking for help without apologizing. I started telling the truth when someone asked how I was. I started calling my sister just to say, "I love you," and letting it be awkward if it needed to be. I started looking at my students like I could lose them in an instant because I could. When I returned to the classroom months later, the first thing I noticed was how loud everything was, how bright, how fast. My students looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I was the one who changed. They were careful with me at first, like I was glass. And then one kid, one of the boys who used to pretend he didn't care about anything, stayed after class. He didn't meet my eyes. He said, "We thought you died." His voice cracked on the word died. And in that moment, my teacher instincts tried to jump in and say something comforting and polished. But the life review taught me not to hide behind polite. So I told him the truth. I almost did. He nodded like he'd been holding something heavy. Then he said, "I'm glad you didn't." And it hit me so hard I had to grip my desk. Because I realized, sometimes you're the adult in a kid's story, the one they remember, the one who makes them feel safe, the one who makes them feel seen. And that means your presence matters more than your performance. If this story is landing in you, subscribe right now and comment one word, present. I want to see how many of us are choosing presence over autopilot. And share this with someone who's living stressed, scared, or numb. Because numbness is a slow death too. Now, let me tell you the part I didn't want to admit. After my stroke, I had to confront the thing I avoided my whole life. I used being needed as a way to avoid being known. I was the helper because it was safer than being vulnerable. I was the strong one because it was safer than asking for comfort. I built an identity around usefulness. And then my brain took it away in one afternoon. And without that identity, I had to meet myself. Raw, scared, human. That's where the emotional part gets real. When you can't perform, you find out who loves you. And you find out if you love you. The light didn't fix me overnight. I still have days where my right hand feels clumsy. I still have fatigue that hits like a wall. I still have fear sometimes. But I also have something I didn't have before. A deep, unshakable knowing that love is not something you earn by being perfect. Love is what you're made of. And if you don't believe me, that's okay. I didn't believe it either. Until I died in front of a room full of teenagers and found myself held by something bigger than my fear. So here's my ask, straight from the heart. Subscribe, like, share, and in the comments, tell me this. What's the one thing you've been carrying alone? Because the moment you name it, it loses some of its power. And if you have your own story, something that happened to you, something you can't explain, tell it. Even if it's messy, even if you're scared, you're not alone. I'm Lauren. I'm a teacher. I had a stroke in my classroom, and I came back with one message. Be present, love harder, and stop waiting for a crisis to start living.